And hey, today we have another special guest on the line. Somebody's been in archery for a little while, and we're going to find out what it's all about for him. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm your host on Archery Talk 101, and we have Caleb Tucker on the line with us, and we're going to find out his exciting story in archery. Welcome to the show, Caleb.
Thanks, Roy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you.
Yeah, I'm Caleb Tucker, and I've been doing competitive archery since 2020. First time I ever shot a bow was when I was like 12 or 13, and then just did a couple random like local 3D shoots. That was pretty much the extent of it. And then that was in high school, I think 10th grade, and then just deer hunted with a bow forever. And then back in 2020, it was right before the pandemic happened. I actually took the same bow that I had when I was 13, which was a Matthews LX. Actually, it's in that closet right there. And I took it to an indoor league that was like 20 minutes away, and I got pretty hooked. And I've always been competitive, and I was like, I need to get a new bow, and I need to take this a little bit more seriously. And yeah, I just started doing some indoor stuff in 2020, and then obviously that kind of, got canceled because of the whole pandemic. And then 2021, I started doing some ASA 3D, some IBO 3D, and then I ended up upgrading to a target bow. And then from there, that's been an obsession, I guess, to say the least. So yeah.
Now, what was it that originally you started in archery? What was it piqued your interest?
Well, I had been a deer hunter, and my dad, brought me up deer hunting and fishing and just being outside in the outdoors. And I had a friend who he was into archery at that time. We were the same age in school, and he was like, "Why don't you come to this 3D shoot?" I was like, "I don't even have a bow." So I bought this really cheap PSE bow. Not saying that they're bad bows. I just at that time it was pretty cheap, and I just got I want to say I got hooked, but I got out of that whole scene, and I just hunted for 15 years. And then for whatever reason, I saw that there was an indoor league starting, and I just so competitive. I just said, I'm going to try that. And but yeah, I originally got started because of a friend, and funny because he doesn't do it anymore and I do, which is kind of,
Seems like that's the way it goes. Somebody gets started and they get hooked, and you lose interest, and now you're not doing it, and they're taking off doing great things with it. And it's just one of those things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you'll have to get him out and challenge him.
I would for sure. I don't think that he would at this point, but maybe. So
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I always like to hear different stories, how somebody got started, and their journey, and everybody's got a different story, and it's so neat to listen to all these different stories of how somebody got started, why they got started, and what they're doing now. And you're competing in archery, and you started off and hunting, and now you're competing. And you just do indoor target? You do 3D competitions, or?
So I do pretty much, I want to say everything, but not everything. I do ASA 3D, IBO 3D, IBO field, and then NFA, Vegas and 5-spot rounds indoors. I haven't quite done any of the 50-meter, FIDA field type stuff yet, but I want to. I just haven't. There's not a ton of it around here in New England, so but there's plenty of 3D, so that's primarily what I do. And then like right now I have no more 3D, and indoor starts up somewhere around December, excuse me, for me anyways. And and I'll be getting ready for like Lancaster and whatnot. So
Thanks. That's not too far away from you.
yeah, it's 6.5 hours for me to get there.
No, that's not bad.
Yeah, not horrible, but the traveling that I did this year was a little crazy for all the I traveled the IBO National Triple Crown, and that was a lot. I did, Pipestem, West Virginia, Nelsonville, Ohio, Franklin, PA, and then back to West Virginia for Worlds for IBO. So that was a lot of travel. So
yeah, a lot of traveling, but it's a lot of fun.
oh yeah, I love it for sure. Wouldn't do it if I wouldn't be traveling that far if I didn't, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things, you're not going to travel if you don't enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's been in your hunting, what's been the most challenging hunt that you were on?
Ooh. Uh well, I shoot a lot of the animals that I take are with my bow. Not to say that I don't, shoot deer or bear with a rifle, but primarily it's with a bow. And over the years, I've kind of, I don't know how to say it other than I almost as like a extra challenge, but I really kind of focused on hunting from the ground and not tree stand, not ground blind hunting, like just shading myself in with the surroundings. So I've killed a lot of my deer and bear from the ground with a bow, which has been, I guess they're all challenging, but
Yeah.
probably the most was a black bear that I killed about 5 years ago. And it was about 15 yards. And that was, I was just sitting in a blowdown and just on a beach ridge, and he came through eating. But that was challenging, just being still, because they're, they can hear so well, they can smell so well, uh, eh, with the wind, everything kind of, there's a lot of aspects to that, but that was probably my most challenging for sure. And I haven't
Yeah.
I haven't branched out to do any like elk hunting or anything. I want to, but in time I will. So
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like that would be a challenge, to be on the ground, bear
yeah,
hunting, and you have no protection. At least if you're in a tree, you have a little bit of chance, but on the
yeah,
ground, you have no chance. So I can say that would be really challenging to, be still enough to not be noticed by the bear, and then have enough nerves to be able to be on the ground with them. And
yeah. It's I guess really the honest reason why I started doing that was most of the places that I hunt are so far back in. I try to, get away from the road. And I mean, I'm in Vermont, so most of it is mountains anyways. But if I'm not in the mountains, I just try to get as far back as I can to get away from other hunters. And it just became too hard to try to carry a tree stand in, even if it was a climbing tree stand. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm making too much noise and spending too much time trying to find the right tree. And one day I just kind of went in and I was like, I'm gonna back myself up against this blowdown and I'm gonna hunt here. And that's kind of how it started. I ended up killing a few deer like that. And I'm like, this is much harder, but way easier in terms of finding the right spot to, ambush, I guess you could say. So
it's easier in the fact you don't have to carry those big old heavy tree stands in.
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and if you got a climber, then you have to have that perfect tree with no branches on it, and
for
you're
sure.
carrying a hang on, you got to carry the pegs, and those all get noise, and those are hard to put in some of your trees. And
For
they do
sure.
make
Yeah.
handles that makes them easier to turn in. But I used to, when I was setting up trees, I used to take a little portable drill and pre-drill the holes so I could get the pegs in. So I was
Yeah.
just working and working, and don't ever try and get in a locust tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
like trying to drill into iron.
I'm sure.
They
Yeah.
are they are a hard tree, and a lot of stickers all over them too. They got these little long needles on them, and
Yep.
yeah, those are hard trees to get in. Those you pretty
Yeah.
much ladder stand till out in there, and ladder
Mhm.
stands, they're so heavy to carry in and big and awkward, and they're hard to set up by yourself.
Yeah.
So I can see hunting on the ground when you're back that far, sure makes it a lot easier.
It does. It just, it obviously raises, more, I don't know what I want to use for a word, but concerns just in terms of like wind, and being seen by the animal. But I've been really, I don't know if you want to call it luck, but probably a little bit lucky in being successful that way. But um, the less disturbance you're going to make, the better off you're going to be anyways. So that's why I kind
Yeah.
of do that. It's been pretty cool and successful at it. So
Well, then walking in, if you don't sound like a human walking in,
yeah.
sometimes you can walk right up on them. I was listening to a story, a guy that he said, he walked in, he was getting older, and so he didn't walk, real fast, and he couldn't see very well. So he'd take a few steps, stop and look and listen. A few
Hmm.
more steps, stop, look and listen. And when you listen to a squirrel, what do? They run and scurry and stop.
Yeah.
Run and
Yeah.
scurry and stop.
Yeah.
So you're not even taking a human with that cadence going in, step, 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 and I've done some of the spot and stock, and one time I seen this deer laying down right next to this road is on a farmer's land, so it's just a road for him driving the tractors. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that's cool. So I want to see how close I could get to it. So I took off my boots. I just got my socks on because boots make too much noise. And I
Absolutely.
walked up quietly. Then I got down. I'm crawling, and then I get a belly crawling, and I got my compound with me, and I get there's a little bitty brush that sticks up about a foot or two, and I'm behind it, and the deer is like 5 feet away from me.
Hmm.
Then I was like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I can't sit up and draw.
Right. Right.
I need a crossbow to shoot it. It's like,
Mhm.
okay. So I just kind of stayed there for a while and just kind of backed out. And I
Yeah.
was able to get that close to it, and it didn't spook off because I went in slow. It didn't make a lot of noise, and
Yeah.
I'd have probably done it a little differently now, but
I,
that was
I,
interesting.
yeah, for sure. I, I got busted one time, by well, it's a spot that I've killed actually a ton of deer and bear, but where I went in and I was sitting behind these two big oak trees, and there was like a, kind of the Y in between. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And there's runways coming in. There was no wind. So I was like, this should work pretty good. And I heard the deer coming in, and I'm like, okay, perfect. Here we go. The deer came out in front of me and it walked. I saw it coming. I was like, okay, that's a buck. And unbeknownst to me, there was a doe and another buck with him, but the doe came in from behind me, and I had drawn and I was pulling out to go across, the backside of the tree, to shoot. It was a 5-pointer, and I heard something to my left, and I turned, and there's this giant buck, and I'm within 20 yards of all of them. I didn't see the doe behind me, and she's stomping, and I can hear her stomping, and I'm like, this isn't going to be good. And I was
No.
at full draw for, it was the longest I've ever been at full draw, and I wanted to let down, but I was like, if I let down, I'm smoked anyways. And when I saw the other buck out of the corner of my eye, I was not interested in the 5-pointer anymore. I,
Right.
I ended up resting the bottom cam on my leg to try to relieve some pressure off of I'm holding 80%, but or it's 80% let off, but still that's a lot after, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
I ended up taking a shot at him, but at that point my body was just so smoked, and I couldn't make a good shot, and I ended up hitting, there was like I know everybody says this story, but there was like a whip, probably a little bit smaller than the size of a quarter, that I didn't see. And I didn't have the greatest shot. I was kind of aiming at the front of the neck because he was staring at me, and it hit that and broke the arrow in half and broke the limb, and he ran off. And I was like, oh, that sucks. But I killed a buck there 5 days later in the same exact spot, which was nice, but bigger than the 5, but not as big as the giant that I ended up missing. But yeah, that whole ground hunting can really cause some issues when you just don't know what's around you. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, if you'd have been up in a tree stand, then they could have walked in, you could have seen them and adjusted, but
for
when you're at
sure.
their level, they're gonna see you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was rough. But yeah.
Yeah, that was exciting. You have deer all the way around you, but you can't really get to any of them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's happened a lot, really. But I say a lot, but probably like, a half a dozen to a dozen times over the years, but it's enough to know all the stories about them anyways, and enough to go, why do I do this? And then I continually do it every year. I go back out and I do the same thing, but it works. So I try not to, don't, if it works, don't fix it. But
Right. Yeah, it sounds like you have a good spot there.
yeah,
And you're still seeing deer. Yeah, me, I'd keep going back
yeah,
until the deer aren't coming there anymore, then find another spot. But
yeah. I think I've killed nine. I think I've killed nine whitetail and one bear in that one spot you know, within reason, within 100 yards to a couple hundred yards, just in that one spot, sitting on the ground for the most part. I think I've killed two out of a tree stand in there. So, but
yeah, that's a pretty good spot when you can have that many.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I already know it, so I don't scout it ever. I know how to hunt it. I know what wind to hunt it on. And I just wait for the right wind and then I go in. So I don't ever have to go in and leave a bunch of scent and potentially spook them. And it's so usually fairly successful on the first couple sits. So I'm going to go in that particular area. So
Yeah, when you learn an area, then you don't have to do a lot of scouting in it until you learn the area, and when they're coming through, you put some time in to figure it out. And that's what's nice about some of the trail cameras. If you're on private property, you don't have to worry as much about them walking off. But
yeah,
you can do a lot of scouting instead of taking weeks and months to figure out, hey, they're not coming through this time of day, or
yeah,
they're only coming through at night. So until they start coming through in the daytime, that spot's not going to work, and they can
right,
get them changed to coming through during the day. And a lot of places are just transition places where they're going through middle of the night, first thing in the morning before it's shooting time. And
right.
um then it's like, well, let's see what we can do about getting them here during the day.
Yeah. That's the
you
nice
know
part about the trail cameras. It does help you determine when they're coming through. Because you could be sitting on a really well beaten path that they have and never see a deer because they're only using it at certain times and you're never there during those times. So
yeah, one spot had cameras out last year. They were coming through 9, 10, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And there's one spot that's coming through like a half hour before sunrise, before shooting time.
yeah,
So they're going through before I can even shoot them anyway. And it's
yeah,
like, okay, finally, in February, I caught it some during the day, both the morning and night, in one spot that, we like the spot, but there's not a lot of good places to put tree stands up.
right,
So that might be one of those that we just have to stand on the ground like you're doing,
yeah, yeah,
because there's no place to put a tree stand.
yeah. That's one spot in particular that I have. I actually went in there right before this podcast. I went in and I was checking it this morning and just literally trying to find a spot that I could put a tree stand, because it's one of those ones that you kind of have to be in there all day because of the time that they come through, which is usually between that 9 and 2 o'clock range. And
Oh,
you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, this is an all day sit spot. And so, but yeah, and I did find a couple trees, but it's getting in there with the tree stand is that's the key part, because it's so far back in and it's kind of a pain, but we'll see.
stick it in and leave it in until the end of the season.
I have some tree stands that are in the woods that I don't ever plan on taking out because and if somebody steals them, then God bless you, but I'm not going back in for them. The only time I go in is to sit in them. So, but I haven't had them stolen yet. So I think we're okay.
Yeah, they're probably far enough back that nobody wants to go back that far.
They're far enough back. I've never seen anybody in there. So hopefully it stays that way, because I've been good. I've been successful in that spot for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. If you go further back, lots of times you don't have as much pressure. And the deer, when they do have the pressure up close, they're going to venture back a little bit further. And, sometimes that's what you got to go, take that mile walk back in there, and,
Yeah.
the mile walk out. And,
Yeah.
when you shoot one, you kind of, I notify where it's at. You do the 1 mile walk out and get your deer cart and walk back. And by then you track your deer and you're good.
Yeah. Yep. I've never actually used the deer cart, which I probably just because of where I live, in the mountains, but it's I usually just I carry a rope. If I had my pouch, I'd show you, but in my fanny pack that I because I do a lot of tracking because there's so much snow up here, but I just have this rope, and then I'll end up breaking off a stick like 12, 13 inches long, and I'll tie the rope, and then to the middle of the stick, tie it around the antlers, and then hold that behind your back, and then just drag on the way out. And it's cheaper than buying that really expensive cart that I always, every time I'm dragging a deer, I'm always like, why didn't I just buy a sled, a jet sled or something, and leave it somewhere, and then I can go and get it. But I don't know. You really find out what kind of shape you're in when you start dragging a deer or a bear.
Yeah. Even a small deer could be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you've had a lot of challenging hunts. What's been probably the most memorable hunt?
Boy, there's been a few. I would say it'd probably have to be there's 2 bucks that are coming into my mind that I'm thinking of in particular, and then a bear hunt that I went on with my dad up in Maine. And that was fun. It was a giant bear that he ended up shooting, but and it was actually we trapped it. It wasn't, legally, but so that was fun, just trying to locate big bear, and you're trying to find an area where there's a big bear that you're not going to get a little boar on. That was fun. But the 2 bucks that I'm thinking of in particular, I both tracked, and it was with a rifle. And just the amount of miles that I went with one of them, I picked up the track. We had just had a bunch of snow the night before. I picked up the track in the morning, like right off in the morning, and I jumped him out of his bed 20 or 30 minutes later, and I shot him on the run. Didn't make the greatest shot, but obviously when they're running. And I tracked him the rest of the day. He kept bedding down, and I ended up taking a chance that a lot of deer trackers will say, like, don't do. But just the way I've tracked enough deer at this point, and what he was doing, it just made sense for me to kind of like hopefully cut him off. And I just figured I'm going to try to cut him off. The wind is not in my favor at this spot. I feel like he's bedded over in here. And if I come up, around this side, it just looked like he was bedded in this area. And I walked a couple 100 yards off where he was, and I had lost blood at that point, but I could still get his track in the snow. So I just figured worst case scenario, I'd just go back and hit the track again. And when I came up over the top of this ridge, I just went really slow, and I looked down, and it was like in the side of this bowl, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He was bedded, and he was looking his backtrack, but the wind wasn't right. So he just figured, because I had jumped him so many times, he was just bedded, looking where I was going to be coming, but I had actually came in from the other angle, and I saw him in his bed. I was like, oh my God, this worked. Thank God. And I shot him out of his bed, and that was probably the most memorable. And just another one, I did something very similar, but I hadn't shot the buck yet. I had just seen where he was headed, and I knew that he was cruising for does in this one area. And I was a few hours behind just from the snow in his track. I knew. So I just kind of cut off into this little, I guess, saddle. And I just sat there for a few minutes. And I knew I was a few hours behind, but he was coming around like this, checking this, I guess you could say, bottom for does. And I heard him grunting, and I ended up shooting him, and I don't know, about 100 yards away. And that was pretty memorable. That was a big buck, not rack size. It was a 4-pointer, but he was like 18.5-inch spread. So it was a pretty big 4, but
Yeah.
he was just shy of 190 pounds. That was just one of those times where you put in a ton of work into it, and you're so far back in, you've been hunting this deer all day, and then to finally make it pay off is like, well, those two were for sure probably my most memorable. But
Yeah, that would be something to be able to, outsmart it like that. It's like you bumped him a few times, and
yeah,
you saw kind of go around and look, and then come back. It's like, yeah, he's expecting you to show up behind him, where he was, and you
yeah,
didn't show up there.
yeah. It's just, I've seen that so many times where when I'm tracking, and I've always wanted to try this with a bow, but and there's times where I feel like I could have gotten it done, but most of the time I'm like, nah, you really need a rifle to do this. But there's been so many times where I jump a buck and I'm still on his track, and then I ended up jumping him again, but I never saw him jump. And you could see where he had stopped behind like a little blowdown or a couple, like a little spruce tree or something like that. And he would turn, you could see where he turned, and he would look and wait for me to see me. And then once he saw me, he would turn and then bust. And it was just stuff like that where I was like kind of putting it together, especially with that buck I shot out of his bed. I'm thinking, I know I've seen beds in here before. I've been back in here. I feel like he's going to be bedded there. And I know he's going to be looking his backtrack, because every other time I've jumped him, he has. So it was just, playing the odds and coming in from a different angle. And it was, I say funny, but it wasn't, it's not funny when you're, killing an animal, but when it's funny to see exactly what you planned on happening. And I'm looking at him, and he's like in his bed looking down that backtrack, waiting for me. And I'm like, oh my God, I outsmarted him. This is amazing. But yeah,
Definitely something to think about when you're going in and you're tracking them, and you bump them up. That they don't
yeah,
generally run a long ways,
no,
unless they really scared them. Just somebody
yeah,
walking, they're just going to move, and you bump them a couple times, and it's like, that's something to think about. If you do bump them a couple times, move off
yeah.
your trail, go a different way, and see if you can go past them. And
Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're on the snow, you can always go back. But
yeah,
and go back to that last spot. But some guys, I have a friend who's really into tracking. He doesn't really do a lot of other types of hunting, and he'll basically, when he goes into an area, he'll go as fast as he can go until he cuts the track, and he doesn't care about jumping them. And once he does jump them, he'll wait like 20 minutes, because most of the time the deer, like you just said, they're going to run 100 yards and stop and turn around and wait and wait and wait. And when they realize that you're not coming, they settle down, and then they go back to feeding or whatever they were going to do. But that's kind of his motto, is like kind of sit down, chill out, for 20 minutes, and then get back on the track, and then better odds of killing the deer. So
a couple of good ideas to think about when we're out there, and you're in an area like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about. That's what's so cool about listening to all the different stories. And I learned something from everybody I talked to, and it's like, here's what's working for you, and that's cool. And then you can learn different things, and you think about things, and that's the thing that's really cool about talking this stuff is we get to learn.
Absolutely. Yep. I feel like every 3D archery tournament I went to this year, especially the national events, I would end up talking to somebody about hunting, and they would be from Iowa or Illinois, Ohio, and their form of their way of hunting is so much different than mine. And then, you're always learning something from somebody, which
Yeah.
is nice to just kind of put into your bag, of tricks. So,
we have forest areas, but we have a lot of areas that just crops, and then you might have, the two areas I have, there's the farmland, and then surrounding the property line is the row of trees. So you're not going to hold them in the spots that I'm hunting. Then there's other spots that have just all kinds of trees. It's
yeah,
like perfectly to hold deer, and depends which spot you have, and so we had to figure out how we can get them coming out, a little more during the day, because
yep.
they're basically nocturnal, because it's a pass through area. So
Hmm.
maybe we have to get a feeder out and feed them only during the day, during the off season, and
Yeah,
so get used
yeah,
to coming into the daytime. But then you got to pull the feeder so much before hunting season, because you
right.
can't have it out there during when you're hunting.
Oh,
And
so you can feed, but you can't bait per se.
right,
Yeah,
you can't hunt over a feeder or within so many yards of it. I forget what it is now, 100 yards or 200 yards,
yeah,
something like that. But it's salt blocks are always good, but they're there all the time.
right. I know,
The
like,
minnow blocks are all the time.
yeah, I know Vermont, we're not allowed to do baiting or any of that stuff, but we can do food plots, which, and I'm sure, a fish and wildlife biologist would be able to explain this to me, but it never, I never understood why you can have a food plot with corn or soybean or whatever, and it is food, but you can't put, let's just use corn as an example. It's like, okay, I'm going to have this sweet corn patch and I'm going to use it for deer, but you can't put corn in the same exact spot, from like a bag or shelled corn or whatever. Just never made a ton of sense to me. It's the same exact thing, but oh well, they know more than I do. So
And it could just be too that the people making the rules aren't hunters or wildlife biologists; they're politicians, and
yeah, I'm sure
they think
that's,
it's not fair. I'm like,
yeah,
well,
yeah, I'm sure that's probably comes into play often, I would assume. But
and one of the things they were concerned about, when you had a lot of blue tongue and stuff going around, is a feeder goes off, and all the deer come in at one time.
right,
Because they'll learn the time it comes up, or they'll hear it go off, and so now they're all coming in, and more chance of spreading it. Where if it's there all the time, now then they just come in whatever their schedule is.
right.
And so I can see, through a feeder and something like that. But we just, whatever the laws are, each state has their own.
Yeah, they do for sure.
Yeah, each state has their own, and probably rightfully so, because out here, we have a lot of open land. You have a lot of forested land, and
Yeah,
not as much cropland. And here out in Nebraska and Iowa, um, we have a lot of crops. Corn, soybeans is generally the two crops that most of them are growing around here. And
mhm. Yeah, the further you get west in the state, closer to the lake, it's fairly flat, and there is quite a few big dairy farms there where there's a lot of corn and whatnot. But where I'm at, I'm butted up against the mountain, and it's, I mean, there is cornfields around here. There's farms all over the state, but it's
yeah,
not like out in the Midwest where it's just all you can see is so
yeah, most of our treat areas are along the rivers. If you get out in the plains, there's just nothing but crops out there. And
mhm.
get away from the Omaha Lincoln area, and there's some spots where there's a lot of good trees around some rivers and lakes and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of open farmland,
Mhm.
and that's a little different hunt. And then when you get out in muleys, they're completely different.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, the whitetail, they pattern. You can sit one place, they're going to run a certain pattern. And muleys, they just roam all over. There's no specific place that they go. They're just a roamer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they just roam around, and you're pretty much there. You have to look for them and find them, and then try and stalk them. And
Mhm.
it's not
Spot
like
them there.
it's not like you can sit and wait for them to come to you like you do the whitetails.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't hunt muleys yet, but there's no muleys around this part of the state. I'm in the eastern part of Nebraska. That I know of, there's no muleys around it, just all whitetails.
Mhm.
So I don't have the option to shoot a muley, and
Right.
a deer's deer. I want the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care whether I shoot a doe or a buck,
Right.
I don't pass up a doe because I want a buck. Back when Nebraska, we only had 2 tags. That was it. You could not get any more than 2 tags. And, I didn't do the rifle. I did mostly the archery. So I'd buy 2 archery tags, and the first year that give me a shot, I'd take it.
Yeah.
Doe, fine, buck, fine. And then I'd wait till December, because ours went through December 31st. Now in December, I'd shoot whatever come by. Until then, after I shot my first deer till December timeframe, I'd only hunt for bucks because I had meat in the freezer. I only had 2
Yeah.
tags. And then come December, I'm going to fill it with whatever deer comes by,
Yeah.
because I don't want to, eat a tag. Those don't taste good.
Right. Yeah. That does. Yeah. That doesn't do any good for you. Yeah.
And now they have the season choice tags, and there's quite a few of those out there, and those allow you to hunt all the seasons. Before, archery in Nebraska used to be, September 15th until, the first weekend, or I think the second week of November is rifle. Then it shut down. After rifle, picked back up again, all the way through the end of the year. Muzzleloader was the month of December, and they've changed it. So archery runs the whole time, September 1st, December 31st.
Mhm.
Even during rifle season, you can be out there with your bow. You just have
Yeah.
to wear the orange,
Yeah.
because you're out there with the rifle hunter. So you don't want to be
Right.
out there without orange on.
Right.
And there is a couple places that I hunt that don't allow firearm for hunting. You can
Oh,
do
wow.
shotgun for like birds, but you can't do rifle for deer. So you can
Yeah.
still hunt during that time. You just wearing your orange. Deer don't see the orange anyway. So
Yeah.
it's like no big deal.
Yeah.
And now then you have those season choice tags, which is good for archery and archer season, rifle and rifle season, muzzleloader and muzzleloader season. And it runs the whole. It's kind of weird. In month of December is the muzzleloader season.
Mhm.
They have to wear orange when they're out there, but I'm out there with my bow. I don't have to wear orange.
Interesting. Huh.
That
doesn't
fortunately
make
where
any.
I hunt, if they're muzzleloading, it'd be me muzzleloading, because we're the only ones on the 2 private properties that we have. So there's
Mhm.
nobody else out there. But still, that seemed kind of strange how during the December, the muzzleloaders are out there, have to wear orange, but us bow hunters don't. But we're
Yeah.
generally up in a tree. So I can see that, but
Yeah.
that's I might have to ask them why they have that.
Yeah. That's an interesting, interesting law, actually, the more to think about it.
I remember one time they had a special rifle season during December, and I'm out there, bow hunting, and all of a sudden I'm seeing these cars driving by, because where we was at, there's a road there. They're like, these are deer hunters driving around, because they're driving around spotting for when they're going to shoot the deer.
Right.
And I'm out there without orange on. I was like, oh, okay. So I started taking orange vest and hanging it in a tree, so at least they can see the orange
Yeah.
vest,
Yeah. Exactly.
know that there was
Yeah.
somebody down there. So you do a lot of target shooting.
Yeah.
Tell some stories about, some of the, the challenging, exciting, or some of your 3D shoots that you've been on.
Yeah. I mean, I've traveled. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. I did so many. I've done so many over the past few years, but I guess probably like the most challenging shoot is really like Lancaster Classic, and it's one of those ones where, and I'm sure a lot of people that have shot it kind of will understand what I'm saying, and maybe they don't. I don't know, but or maybe they just got ice in their veins. I'm not sure, but it's the shoot that for some reason that I have the most trouble with, and I shoot so much 3D, and I've rarely ever gotten nervous when I'm shooting 3D. It's almost relaxing, to be honest. I can count on one hand how many times I've actually been nervous, like during a shot, and like a target panic type situation. But you
Yeah.
go to Lancaster and there's so much on the line, and there's so many people on the line, and which I'm not afraid of, like big crowds or anything. But for some reason I haven't performed the way that I do in practice, leading up to that, because my practice has always been really, really good leading up to Lancaster. And I'm always like, I don't know if you're familiar with their scoring, but like a 660 would be, a X on the biggest spot every, 60 shots. And normally, like last year, my practice was, most of my rounds were between like 635 and high 640s, like 647 ish. So good enough to qualify anyways. And then I get out there and I'm not, and it's not like I'm having, target panic, but I'm just not performing. And I've learned over the past 2 years that, and one of my friends actually told me this. He said, I'd rather have my bow shoot not great in practice and really good at a competition. And I learned that certain ways that you have a bow set up might shoot really good in practice, but it doesn't once your body is under stress, and then your muscles are acting differently, your heart rate and your breathing and everything. And I have a bow right here that I shot this morning, and it shoots so well here in practice, whether it's outdoors or indoors, but the second I bring it to a shoot, it just doesn't perform the same. And I've learned, about holding weight and stabilizer weight, and then trajectory of the stabilizer if you want your back bar down further, so. But yeah, Lancaster for some reason has just been a wild one for me. But yeah, I mean, I went, I think some of the most, I'm trying to think how to say this. Obviously you can go to like a local shoot and you don't really have that much competition, per se. And then you go to a national shoot and there's quite a bit more competition. I think, for sure, I realized that the competition there's so many more people at a national shoot than there is at a local or a regional shoot, that you really have to step up your game when you start going to those national shoots. And I did well this year going to those, but learned pretty quick, like, wow, this is a lot different than just doing the local New England stuff, even, which is still brings quite a few people, but nothing like a national event. I'm sorry if I got off on that question.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Went off on a little tangent there, back and forth, but
Yeah, it's all good. Whatever you want to talk about is fine.
yeah.
As you listen to some of the podcasts, we get in all kinds of subjects.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could talk about these 3D shoots pretty much all day long. I get pretty obsessed about this, and do a lot of training for it. I shoot a ton getting ready for these, and it's, I try to help other people out too, that are getting started in it. And yeah, luckily enough, I was able to do really well this year, and do some good quality shoots, and win, and yeah, achieve some cool things. So it was pretty fun this year.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What's probably the most interesting person you met at a 3D shoot?
Oh boy.
I'm sure you met some characters.
I've met some characters for sure. Yes. I could go a lot of different ways with this. Yeah, I mean, I've met a lot of really good people, and I personally, when I get into a group, I enjoy I enjoy talking. I enjoy trying to get along with everybody. I don't want to, talk your ear off the whole time, but I want to make it fun. I'm not there to, I'm there to compete and beat you, but I'm not there to not, to hate on you or, rule push everything on you and, whatever. And luckily I've only had a couple people in the past few years that have been, a pain in the butt really, but, and I don't need to, out them or anything, but, and then, there's definitely been some characters and whatnot, but I actually, I met a guy this spring at the, IBO National, the one in Pipestem, the first leg of the Triple Crown. And I actually just wrote a blog about him, but, he was one of the more interesting guys that I had met, and just in terms of why he was there and what he was about. And, sometimes you meet somebody in life and you don't know, you kind of drawn to them for one reason or another, and you don't know, why. And, I ended up, working with him for the last few months, teaching him everything I know, because I know when I had met him, he, kind of said that he was, he was new and he was really doing, IBO for, to become a better deer hunter. But he was like, I guess I saw a lot of me, when I was looking at him, like he was really into it. He was obsessed. He wanted to get better. And, he had asked other people and wasn't getting the responses that, he wanted. And I know over the past few years, I've talked to a lot of good people, and I've gotten a lot of good, information and help from people. And, there's some people out there that just don't want to, give up that valuable information. I just decided, with this guy in particular, I was like, I'm going to give him everything that I would have wanted, and wanted when I was in his spot where I was new, but he was probably the most interesting guy, a Marine, and not the stereotypical Marine. No offense to any Marines listening, but not the stereotypical Marine that you would expect. Probably one of the nicest people you could imagine meeting. And, but yeah, he was one of the more interesting people I met. Hunted all over the Midwest, family man, did some boxing, did some, jujitsu, loved deer hunting, loved the art of, 3D and the science behind it and everything that goes into, judging distance and, I guess you could say nerds out on it like I do. And, yeah. So, but
yeah, it's always nice when you find somebody that's interested in what you're doing. And as an instructor, my goal has always been, I want to make them a better shot than me.
yeah,
If I can teach them how to shoot better than me, I
yeah,
did my job, as an
absolutely.
instructor. Now, competing against you, I don't want that to happen. But as an
Right.
instructor, I want you to do, just excel at what you're doing. And it's like, hey, one of my students is here winning nationals or whatever, so that's
Yeah.
always a good feeling that you've taught them to do that. And,
Yeah.
not everybody can shoot at the top level.
Right.
That doesn't mean you can't teach them to get there.
Right. Right. Yeah. I know with him, when I first shot with him, it was just weird how we got, grouped together for the first shoot, and his score, like if you shot par for IBO, you would shoot, a 400. So it would be all tens across the board. And I think his score was like 336. It was pretty poor. He missed a few targets. He was just really struggling with the whole aspect of judging distance and depth perception and whatnot. And I don't, by no means am I taking it, all the credit or anything like that for his accomplishments, because he's got to shoot the bow, not me. I just gave him how I judge distance and how I do it. And then he implemented that into his game. We did a lot of, voice messaging back and forth, videos. I would show him how I do things. And then he went to Worlds and he missed the cut to go into the shoot off by a couple points, and he was the bubble guy. So he was the next guy out, so he was like really ecstatic about how he did. And I was way more ecstatic about, you know, that than I was on all the wins that I had this year. And I won a national event even, and I was so pumped for him. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And so yeah, it's kind of goes what to you just said with the whole, you want them to do better than you almost, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So out of all the archers you've talked to, what is the best tip that somebody gave you?
oh boy. I got to think about that one.
Put you on the spot on that one, didn't I?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just trying to think of all the people that I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of different pros. I would say there's two there's two things that I got from two different archers. One, I already said it, but he's, you know, one of the top archers in the country, really. You know, that's Isaac Sullivan. He beat Chris Schaff, the indoor nationals. He's done a lot of, you know, good things. And he was the one that told me, you know, because I shot with him a lot indoors, and he said, I'd rather have my bow shoot not great, you know, in practice, and I'd rather have it shoot a lot better in competition. And don't be so critical on how it shoots when you're practicing until you see how it reacts when you're in a competition. And that's when I really started like diving into the whole holding weight, stabilizer weights, and really figuring out which, you know, how my bow is going to react in a competition. And I have one bow that I shoot, you know, when I'm getting ready for a competition, I'll shoot 3 times a day, you know, before work, at work, at lunchtime, and then when I get home at night. And I don't have a lot of hair, but I will be wanting to pull my hair out with the way that it shoots when I'm practicing. I'm like, I can't hit what I'm aiming at. And I get so critical on missing, you know, an inch this way or an inch that way, you know, out, you know, I'm shooting 45 yards, 50 yards. And I'm like, why is it? And then I go to a competition and it's just shoots lights out for me. And I'm like, this is what he's talking about. It's just not putting so much emphasis into the way it shoots when you're in practice, just the way your body reacts. And then the other tip was from a guy, I'll try to say his last name, but I probably won't get it, and he'll probably, you know, bust my chops for it. But Rob Lee Lashur said, if you want to know how your body's going to react when you shoot, you know, in a competition, run up a hill and have your bow with you. And when you get to the top of the hill, make a shot with your heart pounding like that. And I was like, okay. So I actually will, a lot of times I'll work out, and then after my workout, I'll go out and I'll shoot, you know, 30 to 60 arrows, just to try to, you know, emulate that whole competitive nature where your body's just reacting differently. So I don't know if those are so much tips as they are just statements, but those are the only two things I can think of at this time. So,
well, there's always, you know, little tricks that you learn from somebody else that's having, you know, that has had that problem, or like that. That's two stories, you know, the two instances you talked about.
mhm.
You know, there's always something to it, because you go, you know, your body is tense differently. Your
Yeah.
bow's going to react differently. You know, it's just like, you know, when I'm talking about, you know, how to grip your bow. Well,
Mhm.
you don't actually grip the bow, you put it in your hand. And
Right.
those that like to hang on to it, you can't consistently hang on to it. I've seen people, their hand is turning white. They're gripping it
Yeah.
so tight. It's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? Are you trying to strangle it or what?
Yeah.
Let go of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, if you don't put it in the right part of your hand, or if you're putting pressure in the wrong spot, you know, that acts all differently.
Right.
And when you're tense, you're gonna be more tensed up. You're not gonna be able to relax. And you know,
Right.
that's always the hard part of getting up there and learning how to relax. You know, like
Yeah.
you said, you know, work out, get that heart rate up, and then try and relax. You know, like was it the the guys that go the skiing and shooting the guns.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I can't
what is
think of
it?
what that's called, but the
Biathlon or
biathlon. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was thinking triathlon. It's like, no, that's 3 events. This is 2 events.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're going skiing, and now they got to be very precise. So they got to drop that heart rate quick.
Yeah.
And that's something that we might need to look at too, is get some kind of a heart rate monitor on you, and then do you work out walking to it, and then just monitor how long it gets back to what your normal heart rate is.
Right.
And
Right.
if you're stressed, if you're in the competition, just check your heart rate and say, okay, I'm up, I got to relax, and then just learn a
Yeah.
process to relax in the heart rate. And that might help, might not. It's just
Yeah.
something that we got to work out it. And
Yeah.
at those big events, there's a lot of stuff going on. And
For sure.
maybe the thing is you shoot targets, your 5-spot or your single spot, you have the white ring, and that's how big their target is, because you got a steel plate around it.
Yeah.
So now you have to hit inside that steel plate of your wrecking arrow.
Right.
Well, make a little smaller one,
Yeah.
or move back further. And now
Right.
you got to be now next thing you know, you're at 40 yards shooting a 2-inch circle.
Yeah.
And you have to hit that. That brings up some stress, because every time you
Absolutely.
shoot, you're wrecking, easily a $10 arrow, because like you're probably shooting, your competition grade arrows. That's
Yeah.
all I shoot is the competition ones, the 1000 straight and the carbons.
Yeah.
And they're not cheap.
No,
You
I
get
think
a $10 arrow, you're going to lose if you miss. So that'll put extra pressure on you. And I've
absolutely.
talked to some people that, they'll have the kids make all the noise you want to do, just whatever you want to do, just have fun back there. Just don't run into me while I'm shooting.
Right.
But
Right.
go back up there and you make all kinds of noise. So you tune out all that other noise. And
Yeah.
you can get good at tuning out the background noise and just focus on what you're doing. And big event, it's probably more important, because there's more people going on, more noise. One thing you could do in practice is just have something that makes noise in the
Yeah.
background. Not really music, but because that could, because that could get you. Okay, you got to ignore the
Yeah.
music. Put something that you want to kind of move to, and it's like, okay, I got to ignore that, and
Yeah.
or just have
Exactly.
just background noise, all kinds of just random noise going on in the background, and
Mhm.
get to where you can tune it out. And that's something you could do to try to alleviate some of that tension in the big events. And just kind of focus on, you're in your own world, you got your lane, you're aware of the
Right.
other ones, you're aware of the people on your right and your people on your left, or
Right.
the person on your right, person on the left. In the small event, you might be aware of 2 or 3 people on each side. And when you get up there, just focus. So you just got those 2 people on each side of you, or 1 person each side of that is there, that you're aware of. And maybe that's something that somebody could try.
Yeah.
If
sure.
our listeners try something like that and it works, hey, let me know.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
know. I know. I've thought of a bunch of different things before. I like getting ready for events. I thought of like inviting a friend over and being like, hey, let's put $20 or $40 down, because then that kind of raises the want inside of you,
Right.
to put you in that state of mind where this is more like what it's actually going to be like when you're in that spot.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I know a pro archer told me you can't ever really, it's always going to be there. You can't really defeat it. You just gotta like learn to live with it. And there is times where you get into this flow state per se, where, and I've experienced that a couple times, where it's just like, there's nothing, it wouldn't matter who I was shooting against. I don't think they could beat me, type of thing. And that sounds kind of arrogant, but I'm sure there's a lot of archers out there that have felt like that at times, where they get into this float state, and it's just nothing is bothering them. It doesn't matter what's going on in the background, anything. But I have noticed, even even as relaxed as I am when I'm shooting 3D, um, it's still, you still think about those things like, oh man, this is a big event, or, oh, I really want to hit, I need to hit this bonus ring if I want to try to win today, and, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah, that's one of the things I've talked to some other archers where the mental game is what's going to mess you up. That you can't think about the next shot because you haven't done it. You can't think about the last shot because it's already done, can't change it. And the
yeah,
hard part is keeping that mental aspect to where this is the only shot that counts. I
for
don't care what
sure.
I did before it. And I don't want to know what my score is.
Yeah,
I don't care what the score is
yeah,
because it doesn't make any difference.
yeah,
You know, like Kenny Rogers' song, about counting your winnings when the gambling's done.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it doesn't matter what you have at the time. It
No,
just matters what you're doing at that particular shot. The only thing that exists is that one shot. There's nothing before and after it. That's the hard part is it's like, oh, I messed that last one up. It's like, okay, now I'm thinking I messed that one up. So what are you
yeah,
thinking? You messed that one up. So what do? You got to
right,
mess that one up,
right,
you know?
exactly. Yep, you couldn't have
So
said it any better. It's like Cam Hanes says, nobody cares, and nobody cares but you, and that's probably the biggest piece of advice you could give somebody thinking about the mental side of it, because nobody does care but you, literally. I'm the only one that cares how I'm doing. It's not like one of the 3,000 other archers at the shoot cares how I'm doing, really, at the end of the day.
yeah,
So it's realizing that you're the only one that you're competing against, and that's it. So
right. And you can think, to help you in that thought, it's like, do I care how they're doing?
right,
I don't care how they're shooting.
right,
It really doesn't matter. If it's a friend of yours, you kind of care for your friend, but do you really
right,
care how well they do or how bad they do? Because you
right.
can't control it, only them.
Yeah,
So look at what you're doing and focus on that one shot.
yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
it's like pulling a leg on a deer. You only get one shot.
Yeah,
You make a good one or you don't.
yeah,
It's one of
that's
those
true.
digital things. It's either good or it's not.
Yep,
And
and
when you
that's
come
the
up,
next one.
and one of the mental games that you can play on there is when you start your shot process, however your shot press goes, everybody has their own way of doing it.
Yeah,
And before you draw butt, you focus on the center of that X ring, that little dot in there. Now,
hmm,
me, I can't see it, but
yeah,
I don't see it that well. But you focus on where you want that arrow to go the whole time. You're focused on only on that arrow. You draw back, you go through your process. You're still focusing on the arrow. You start your shot press. You're focusing on arrow. The only thing you're doing is you're visualizing and focus on that arrow hitting that spot. And what's it going to do? Because you're focused on it hitting that spot, it's going to
gotta
hit
go to
that
that
spot.
spot. Yeah,
Yeah. Where if you think about, hey, that last one, I missed that last one. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't want to miss this one. So what did you just say? I'm going to miss this one because your mind sees, I don't want to miss this one. What did your mind
right,
hear? Miss this one. So
right.
what's it going to do? Miss this one.
Yeah, it's like law of
So
attraction. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, law of attraction. Yeah,
yeah,
it's what you're thinking about. It's what you're going to get. And I was, I'll tell people sometimes like, okay, don't think about the American flag.
yeah, and
Don't
you're
think
gonna think
about the
about it.
American flag.
Yeah,
Don't think about the American. What do you think? What's in your mind? The American
right,
flag. I told you,
exactly.
don't think about it, and you're
Yeah,
thinking about it.
right,
So, same thing, look at it. It's okay. Arrows dead center in the X ring, dead center in the X ring, arrows dead center in the X ring, arrows dead center in the X ring. You're thinking this all the way through. You're focused on the arrows dead center in the X ring, and then you shoot. So, what did you train your mind to do? Hit the dead center of the X ring.
absolutely. Yep.
And that's a big game. And I actually had a psychologist on. We talked about that kind of
Hmm.
concept in here, and I know a while back I interviewed a young lady that was just killing it, and her attitude was just perfect in that. And we'll see her in the Olympics. I think
Yeah.
she was 14 or something.
Hmm.
um I think she's in the group too, so she may watch this, I don't know. But
Yeah,
there's I've talked to so many different people that a lot of that mind game comes up.
for
And
sure.
you can mess with somebody else's mind just by what you're saying to them.
Absolutely.
Oh, this target this target is hard. Nobody's going to be able to hit this one. Would you put in their mind, this target is hard, nobody's going to hit this one. But would you put in your mind, this target is hard, nobody's going to hit one.
Yeah.
So you're going to sabotage yourself as well as somebody else. So you're better off just thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. Don't even worry about what they're doing. Their mind game is going to mess with them. How are they doing? And you just focus on, you just concentrating as you judge the yardage. You say, okay, this is the yardage. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the arrow right here. Before you can get your time up, you come up and now you've already prepared for that arrow hitting there. You go there and you draw back. And now what's in your mind? Hitting where you want it to go.
Right.
And, that's one of the things that I do, when I'm, I found out somebody shoots a bow, and I'll say use a wrist strap, and it's quit pulling the trigger. Well, how you know I'm doing that? I've been teaching for many years. Quit doing it. Well, that's your first lesson for free. And what happens is index finger is a fine motor skill, moving it, and that's why you can move them kind of, but have one up. I can't do it and talk at the same time. You have one up and then one out, and then that comes in and down and up.
Right.
I can't do it and talk.
Right.
Because of two fine motor skills. Aiming is a fine motor skill, and so is pulling the trigger. You can't do both. So while you're thinking about pulling the trigger, because I'll tell them do that. Okay, aim at that spot. Focus on that spot only. If you break focus on it, it's going to blow up and going to kill you. Make it. This is dangerous. And now move that finger without thinking about the finger. And I can't.
Yeah.
Now those that say, yeah, I can do it just fine. My coaching them is done.
Yeah.
Because if they can't get that concept, we're done, because I can't teach them anything.
Yeah.
But then they do that, because while you're thinking about pulling the trigger, what'd you stop doing? Stopped aiming, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to hit? You're not aiming. You're just pointing in some general direction. You're not going to hit what you want to shoot. And that was something I had, that's a concept I couldn't understand until I learned back tension release. I was like, well, how do you know where you're going? Because I grew up shooting firearms, I spent high school in rifle team. So I'm used to, finger at the tip of the trigger and the tip of your finger and gently squeezing, because I don't have to worry about the aiming part, because the rifle is, my body is set so that the rifle is stable. All I got to do is gently squeeze the trigger. Well, being a rifle shooter as well, there's a lot of things that we can do, a little different. I don't need a steady stick, because I use my hip and my arm, like we do in competition. You don't have that arm up and out, because that's too unstable. So that's how I shoot when I went moose hunting. That's how I shot my moose, standing.
Oh, wow.
And it was about 300 yards away. That's a whole different story, but
that's cool.
But that's just the way you do it. Now the only thing you have to do is squeeze the trigger. But in a bow, you have to actively aim.
Yeah.
And while you're actively aiming, you cannot pull the trigger.
Yep. I've seen so many people, and I did it when I first started, but I can say proudly, I do not punch the trigger anymore. But I see so many people, even on a national level, that punch the crap out of the trigger. And it's the way I look at it is there's only a few select people that can actually do that accurately all the time. But you'll even say, and I won't say their names, but you'll even see pro archers who punch the trigger, and you'll see them get target panic, and they start almost get it, and then they don't, and they're trying to reset and trying to time it at the right time, or they use their thumb or whatever. But I don't do it, because you can shoot really accurately that way for so many times, but when the pressure's on and your body is so used to shooting, punching that trigger and being effective and efficient, every 3.5 seconds, the first time that you go over that 3.5 second mark, guess what happens? You come off the target and you punch the trigger because your body's telling you to punch, and it's been too long, and you miss the target. And I see people that all the time. I saw it this year at the third leg of the Nationals. This kid, pretty good shot, punched the trigger. He was using a wrist strap and came up to a target, and it was a cheetah, a leopard, whatever the IBO calls that target, and he shot it in the butt. And I went, what? I was like, what happened? And oh, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, I didn't say it, but I'm thinking, well, I know what happened because I've been there and I've done that before. And I know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what you just did. You got some target panic and you punch that trigger instead of, like you said, you can use a back tension release and activate the shot without,
And I that's how I shoot my my wrist strap. It's not a back tension style release. It's got the little trigger on it. I have my handheld, which they call a thumb release, which is the worst way to fire is with your thumb, because your index has more dexterity than your thumb. So you want something that has good dexterity against something that has probably the worst dexterity on your hand, and you're going to fire the trigger. And you don't do them. In fact, in the last video, I went over a whole bunch of series and I showed a couple of videos of me shooting my wrist strap and my handheld. And if you watch the video, you don't see my finger move.
No.
You don't see my hand move. You just see the shot go off.
Right. You're activating it with your back. You're just pulling.
Yeah. But I do put the trigger clear up on the second joint, one closest to the hand. I put it there, just let it relax, and it goes off. And then the other handheld, I put it right in the joint between my index finger and my thumb. I don't have that knob on there. What I need the knob for? That just forces you to put your hand off to the side. I put it in there, and actually I can make that and fire just by tightening my hand up. If I'm in a position where I've got to fire it, I can make a fist, but that's not my nature to do that. It's just pull through. I can fire it that way if I had to, but I don't, because I can just pull through and make it go off anyway. But the target panic you're talking about, you see the finger kind of jerk. And when I was first learning it, they kind of explained a little bit what's going on. And I've noticed that as well. What happens is your pin, because you're watching your pin, not the target. Your pin goes over the target where you want it to go. Your mind says pull the trigger. You start pulling the trigger, the pin moves off. Your mind says, don't shoot. So it's shoot, don't shoot. Shoot, don't shoot. And if you're trying to pull the trigger, you're going to have that 100% of the time. You want to look at the target, put the pin over it, let the pin float, and then just concentrate on where you want it to go and pull through. Let it go off whenever you want. And I've had people I take and teaching them, and we've got them fairly well sighted in. So I say, okay, you aim, keep your finger off the trigger. I'm going to pull the trigger whenever I feel like pulling the trigger. Your job is to aim. And not out of 10 times to hit the target. But if they're pulling the trigger, they're not going to hit the target 9 out of 10 times. It might be 2 or 3 out of 10.
Right. I the way I activate, I can shoot any release, but I use a thumb button primarily. I do carry a back tension release with me, and I can shoot both. But I shoot everything just like a back tension. I'm pulling through, and I guess you could say I'm not an aggressive style shooter, but I am. You will see me, follow through quite a bit. But I like the way I shoot the thumb button is the way that you're supposed to shoot the thumb button is, and pulling and not punching and not only using your thumb. But so I'm wrapping around and then using my back and just continuously pulling until it goes. So I don't actually know when the shot's going to break. I'm just focused on having my pin in the area that I want it and not worrying about anything else until the shot breaks. And then, because the second I start trying to control it too much, then it's all over. Then you start nervous, and then you have to let down, and then it's like, okay. So, but I know Joel Turner does a really good course on how to fire a bow and getting over target panic, and that's pretty helpful for people that have that issue. And I would suggest doing that, or working with a coach to get over it. But,
because if you have target panic, you're trying to pull the trigger. If you're not using the trigger to pull, if you're just going through back tension, how are you going to have target panic because you don't know when it's going off? You don't know when to abort the shot.
Right.
You're just going to go. And then if you let down, that's the part, like the handhelds, if not a beginner's release.
Right.
The regular back hinges are definitely not a beginner's release.
No,
Because
punch
you're
yourself
gonna
in the face a few times.
many times.
Yeah.
And even with the trigger style, the wrist strap, I teach to put your finger behind the trigger, which sometimes can be difficult because it's already so short, but you cannot pull that trigger and you're drawing back. A buddy of mine, he smacked himself in the mouth when he went from fingers to release, and he smacked himself in the mouth. And I says, "You pull the trigger when you're drawing." "No, I didn't." "Yeah, you did."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not you that your fingers up there. You touch that trigger, it goes off, and you smack yourself in the mouth most of the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I teach finger behind, because it can't go off. With the handheld and the hinges, there's no trigger to put your finger behind. You just got to make sure you
Right.
keep it off. And the hinges, a few times I've shot those, you got to really make sure you turn them forward,
Yeah.
because in your draw process, because if you get partway back, it's going to go off.
Right.
And it's a whole different game when you start going to those. And I
For
was
sure.
buy a good quality release. Don't buy the
Absolutely.
cheap ones.
No.
If you're just starting out and you're on a real tight budget, maybe you can get by with a release that's not so good. But it's just going to hurt your technique.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Spend
such
the
a
money.
crazy part.
Spend the money. Quit buying the low end, the cheapest release you can, because the two things that you need a good release. And I don't like my triggers to feel any movement. I like them really, really tight. I have the Carter chocolate addiction. I have the hardest spring in it I can put in it, because it doesn't go off. My son has a Carter, but with a lighter trigger. I can't shoot it, because as soon as I go back and touch it, it goes off. I want to put my thumb on part of the metal part. So I put a little pressure on that, and then that kind of tightens that pocket up around the knob for the trigger. And then as I pull through, it goes off. I have another release when I had my store. They wanted me to carry some of the releases. I think it was True Fire. And I told the guy, it's like, okay, if Walmart carries it, I won't stock it.
Yeah.
I did have one that matched it, but it was one I give with all my bows, the setup. When I sold my bows, back when the Nova was the entry level bow, and I'd sell the bow, I'd put a release on it, string dampeners on it, half a dozen arrows, because they all come with the quiver and tips. The only thing you need is a case. I didn't carry cases because Walnut sold them for $5 more than I could buy them for.
Yeah.
So I didn't bother with them because they take up a lot of room. But if you want a good quality one, then I'd order those in. So that's how I sold on my bows, as well as set up, and I had instruction with them because I wanted the new archers to know how to shoot. And that was just that cheap. At that time, I was paying like $11 or $12 for the release and selling for $20. I just included it in the price of the bow. It was a little bit higher than just a plain bow, but it had all this stuff on there. And once they get going, now they come in and let's get you a better release. Let's get you into something, better quality, and leave that as your backup when you're out hunting. Worst case, you go back to one of those cheap ones later, and gets you into good release, because that's just going to help your form. But starter out package that's never shot before, they're not going to know the advantage of the better quality releases until they've shot for a while. And then they say, okay, do I want to stay with a wrist strap? Do I want to go to the handheld? I want to go to, what do I want to have? And, I've got one that has the jaws on it, but I also have one that has the hook on it. My Scott has a hook on it that I use as my cold weather release. I like those because I can find the loop and hook it up. I don't have to worry about opening jaws up and closing them on them. My handheld, my Carter, it locks the loop, so it's just there. Find the string, run down, find it. So I don't want to look at my loop when I'm hooking up. So that's why I like those.
Yeah. I've ran a few different, but I have a B3 BG Pro, which is a really nice release. That's a back tension release. And then I have a Scott Longhorn Micro Pro back tension release. Also another one, pretty heavy. I like a heavy release. And then I run a Stan Perfex and thumb release, and I really like that one. That one I'm pretty consistent with. I shouldn't say pretty. I'm very consistent with the placement of my hand every time, which can be a giant accuracy killer if you're using a release and your hand isn't the same exact, position every time. It can really affect especially with a thumb button. If your thumb is different on the trigger, it can really affect it. So, but yeah, I don't really mess around with too many wrist strap releases anymore, but I can if I can still shoot them. I have a couple actually in my closet right there, but I just don't use them anymore.
Yeah, I know, get a good quality release. And I talked to the president of True Ball,
Mhm.
and we looked at some of their releases, and they've got some nice releases. Their high-end releases are really nice,
Absolutely.
right along with the Scott and the Carters and the Stands. The
Yep.
True Ball has got some really good products out there. And
They have my favorite release, the Fulcrum Flex. That's my favorite.
yeah,
I just don't own it, but I will. I'm going to get one, but that's my favorite. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's so many goods out there, and a lot of archers have a lot of different releases, and
Mhm.
if you're going in there, it's like, I don't know which release to get. Do you have some, different ideas of what bring up your release and say, here's what's good about this one, here's what's bad about this one. Here's how it feels, adjust it for them. And, I probably wouldn't do that to one I'm going to use tomorrow in my competition. But,
Yeah.
if you're like me, I have other ones that I would let them use.
Yes. Yeah.
Here, try this and see what you think. Do you like the way this one feels? And some of your shops will have what they have a little firing line that's, and it's got a little
Yep.
loop on it that you can try
Yep.
the releases out. Not a lot of weight, but it's kind of weird. The thing kind of wants to pull back and twist up on you,
Yeah.
but you're just trying how the release feels. So you don't care anything else. How does that release feel in the hand? And
Right.
go to your different shops and try them. If they don't have one of those, then you might have to see if they'll set up a bow for you. Shoot light poundage. Start with shoot lightest they'll set the bow for.
Yeah.
You're not trying to see how much you can shoot. Um, just go up there and try them. And the shop don't have any you can try, then you might have to find a different shop or store. Now, if you go into Walmart, you're not going to try up there.
No.
That's not the place. That's not the place to get quality equipment.
No.
Yeah, not even your arrows. I wouldn't even buy arrows from them unless I'm going to use them for just shooting pigeons off the barn doors or something.
Yeah.
Something I don't care about. But yeah, it's there's all kinds of things you can deal with straightness in your arrows and release. There's so many
Mhm.
things you can adjust. And if you're not sure why you want to have those 1000s, those competition grade arrows, just talk to anybody that shot the lower quality ones, and you'll see the groups get tighter and tighter, as you go on. And I've done that too. I had a friend of mine, he was shooting, I think at the Beemans or something, and they were like a 3000s. And he was the same draw length that I was, so he could shoot my arrows. And I said, here, shoot some of these. It was amazing how much tighter his group was shooting my arrows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one, there were PSE arrows fetched with feathers, but they were 1000 straightness instead of 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It makes a big
it
difference.
makes a difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does make a big difference. And but you know what? What's your budget say?
Yeah. That's something to consider too. I know when I'm building my arrows, I have some over there, but when I'm building my arrows and they're 1000 straightness, I'll roll them on both ends to see if there's any wobble. And if there is, then I'll cut off. Sometimes my arrows actually, the label won't be in the same spot on each arrow because I'm cutting off on one end or the other to adjust. But yeah, I mean, straight arrow is crucial, especially in the back end of it. So
yeah, it's so important on that. And then there's also in them, there's always a seam someplace.
yeah.
Some people try and find that seam, and then when they fletch them so that it's always down or up or wherever it's at,
Yeah.
and or maybe put your cock feather right on that seam.
Yeah.
They go through all that. I don't, because at hunting distance at 20 yards, it doesn't make any difference.
Right. Nope, it doesn't. It only makes a difference when you're doing you'll see a big difference when you're out, like, past 40 yards, 50 meters, 50
Right.
yards, like that. That's when you're really gonna see a difference. But
Well,
yeah,
and
there
then
is some
too,
arrow. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah. And then too, there's a difference between, whether using vanes or feathers and what type of vanes, and how big your feathers are is how it
Yep.
acts at the longer ranges.
For sure. There's some arrow companies that have, like Victory, they're spine aligned, so they actually have a digital line on the actual shaft that shows you where to fletch, with your cock feather, whatnot, which is pretty helpful. I know I've used Victories, and that's definitely helpful, so you don't have to like knock tune to find out where your tear is in the paper,
Yeah.
when on each, keep turning your knock and find out which way it shoots the best. That can be a pain in the butt, but
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of good things that some of these new arrow manufacturers are doing.
for
But,
sure.
I'll be shooting my PSE arrows for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I had, when I had the store, and I was closing the store, I sold off all the fishing stuff, but all the
Mhm.
archery stuff, all the arrows. I kept all the Comp Pro 300s, which is what I shoot. I kept all those. Like, okay, I'm not gonna sell those off. I want them, so I have plenty. I'm not gonna, go through enough of them to do that.
Yeah.
And I did sell off all the rest of them, or most all the rest of them. So, you know, I'm not gonna be switching arrow manufacturers unless somebody's like, here, we want you to try these, send me
Right.
something to try. But other than that, and I'm not asking manufacturers to send me anything to try out or anything. And if they do, fine. If not, yeah, that's not what I'm doing this for. So, I just shoot what I like to shoot, and they're a tough shaft. The ones I had one time when I was at my store, I brought a broadhead target in, getting ready for hunting season, and after working all day, I probably shouldn't have been shooting, but I had my target down there, and I shot, and I missed, and I stuck my broadhead in the concrete block wall.
Oh boy.
I still use that broadhead.
Oh wow.
It was a Muzzy. It stuck.
Yep.
The broadhead was stuck in the concrete block wall, and the arrow was laying down. The insert was cracked in half, and the shaft was broke back about an inch
Yep.
after adding stuck in a concrete block wall.
Wow.
And I cut, back past that, and my kid was using it, because there he was, like 5, 7 years old, and
Yeah.
not shooting any high poundage. So I just cut him back past the bad spot. There you go, another arrow for you to shoot.
Yeah. 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 There's some good arrows out there. Some good arrow manufacturers. Have shot quite a few different ones, and um, they're all pretty comparable. They're all good. I mean, but well, I shouldn't say that. There is some that I'm not a fan of. I'm not going to out them, but
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah. Back then, I sold the gold tips and a PSE shafts is what I had.
yep.
I stocked the shafts. I didn't stock fletched arrows because I had all the different color vanes and different color feathers, and different sizes. And you come in and you pick your color. What's your color scheme you want? You want green, chartreuse and pink. You got chartreuse and pink. If
Right.
you wanted all black, you get all black. All
Yeah.
red or whatever. Pick your colors. That was the advantage. Coming into my store instead of somebody else's. You got to pick your arrows, what color you want for them, and how long. We custom cut them all, because I'll come full length, and we
Mhm.
glue the inserts in, and go from there. And there's just everybody come in and want different colors, and I had all the colors.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much got almost all my veins are gone. I just find one strip of some I had together, but I don't have any 5-inch feathers anymore, because there was a traditional group that they use 5-inch on their wood arrows, and so I got rid of those. I didn't use 5-inch. I used 4, but I kept only 4-inch feathers, and so I got lots of different colors, and barred feathers, shield cut, parabolic
Yeah.
cut, and I even That's one of my sons. It's 2 yellow and a black barred feather.
Yeah.
This happens to be a gold tip. It looks like a wooden shaft. It's their traditional, what does it say? Traditional. And
Yeah.
it looks like a wood, but it's a carbon. And I just need refletching because fletching's starting to come off a little bit. But this little band on here, I would put the band on here, fluorescent white tape,
Yeah.
wrap, and those show up real good with a flashlight in the middle of the night. You can see
Yes.
them laying underneath trees. Better
Yes.
than the Luminox, because the Luminox, if you catch something and it throws the Luminox out, you don't get to see your shaft anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
No batteries. Although
Yeah.
I do have some Luminox, they're really good Nox to use because they do light up real well. But that's how I do a lot of mine. I have it wrapped with this fluorescent wrap on here, and they're normally they're twice as long as that. I cut them in half because I don't need all that, and I wanted to move it down below the fletching so that I can fletch. I can cut this off and refletch. I don't have to worry about messing the wrap up.
Yeah.
Because if I cut this off and the wrap is here, I'm cutting through the wrap, and now I have to put the fletching right back on the exact same spot, and that ain't happening because I have probably about 14 different jigs that I could use. I have 8 Bitzenbergers, left over from the store, and I've got like a half a dozen the BPEs, the little plastic ones. So getting them set the same, no, that ain't gonna happen. You get them close, but that's why I shoot them all and see how they're turning out. Sometimes you'll get an arrow that will shoot great with field tip, but will not shoot a broadhead. There's nothing you do to get them lined.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's something like that. Yep.
Don't know what it is, and it's like, okay, it shoots field tips just fine. Put the field tip on. That is a target arrow. That's not a hunting arrow. And then I go through and I try and get so I can at 20 yards, I can hit the X ring with my broadheads.
Yeah.
I tune them up so I can do that. And, there's ways you can do that.
Right. Yeah. Bear shaft tuning. There's so many different ways to tune. It's nuts, but for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know if they still have them, but I had something called a U-bar. You'd put that on a rubber O-ring, and you put that on your broadhead and then rubber O-ring, and then you could tighten it down and loosen it up, because as you take your on mine anyway, you take and line up the fletching. So you lay it down on the table, and you line your broadhead up to be right there the same way. So they're lined up even with the broadhead. And then you'd start there. And then you could take and you could tweak it a little bit tighter, a little bit looser, and you could actually direct where that broadhead is hitting. And so I'd adjust it until I could get in that X ring. And now that's tuned, and I'd put a little mark on it. So I knew when it's always lined up, it had to be in this position, because you could easily put them in a quiver, take them out and turn slightly. Because it's not locked down tight. There's rubbering, to keep them right down. So I'd put a little white mark on it. So I could always look, yep, those line up, we're good to go. And it's I had some 7,000 straightness PSE arrows. They come out what they call their hunter shaft.
Oh my god.
Which is basically the rejects from their 3, 1, 3, and 6,000s.
Right.
But they're still close enough, 6, 7, most not really a whole lot of difference. So I got those in, and so I'm going to try them. So I ordered some shafts in, and I set them up, and I'm shooting. And normally I could keep my broadheads in the X ring, but with those, the best I could do is keep them in the white.
Oh wow.
That's the best I could do with those arrows, to keep them in that was the difference between 1 and 7. And so when I wanted to start replacing some of them, I discovered, PSE goes 1, 2, 3, and 4 for spine straightness. And the higher the number, the stiffer the spine. For a lot of them go the reverse direction.
Yeah.
Well, they sent them in 400 spine, which was heavier arrows. So now when I'm trying to match my Comp Pros up to them, they're way light. I was like, what's going on? I discovered that. It's like, so now that I'm putting weight tubes in my hunting arrows to bring the weight up the same, because I want to go to my bow and resight all the pins.
Oh, that's interesting. So they actually did it backwards than most arrow manufacturers. Okay. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
they do by stiffness. The higher the number, the stiffer the spine. Where the other ones are going by deflection. I think how much is deflecting. A 100 spine is less deflection than a 200 spine, which is more deflection.
Right.
And those, I forget the distances you weigh a certain amount of weight and over a certain distance, and then how much it moves is the spine stiffness. And I've never heard about spine testing them because I don't generally buy bulk unknown spine, which arrows that I'd have to spine test.
Yeah.
But,
Mhm.
but you can easily, look it up for how to do it. Maybe someday I'll figure it out and do a little class on it.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff that we can do on these. It's just endless amount of stuff that we can do with our bows.
Oh yeah, it's crazy the amount of tuning that I do to my target bows are, you would be like, why are you doing that? But it works out. And to be perfectly honest, my bow that shoots I have 2 target bows, and one, if I shot it through paper right now and showed you what it looked like through paper, you would be like, I don't want to shoot that. And it shoots awesome. But it's just the way that I have it tuned. It doesn't, there's certain there's some pro archers out there that will, tell you, like Paige Pierce she put out like a 15-minute video about tuning, and that paper can kind of lie to you at, in the beginning stages of the tuning. It's more less like just a guide, but I bear shaft tune, I walk back tune, I adjust the first, second, and third axis. I mean, I knock tune. There's so many different things, and that's just for target. But for hunting, I try not to do. I try to just use mechanical broadheads. Otherwise, it can become, as you know, a lot harder to tune with like a muzzy. And I shot deer with muzzies or G5s or whatever, but it's just easier for me to just throw a mechanical on there, and I don't have to worry about that whole broadhead tuning portion. So
yeah, that it does affect it a little bit, even a mechanical.
Yeah.
But at the distance we're normally hunting,
Yeah.
you're not going to notice a difference.
No.
So you can pretty much go with whatever you want. And
Yeah.
As the bows get faster and faster, those fixed blades are getting harder and harder to control.
Yeah.
Mine, my bow that I hunt with is rated at 320 feet per second, but I think I'm probably getting about 280.
Yeah.
Just because I have string dampeners on it, I have a peep, I have a kisser button, I have a loop on there. I've put string dampeners on all the cables,
Right.
for quiet. I've got some other stuff on there, and I'm not ever going to get that speed because I don't want that speed, because I'm not shooting 70 pounds, 350 grain arrow, 30-inch draw length, 1 knock point.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever shoot that, so I'll never get
Right.
it. And I can tune the broadheads in real good at those kind of speeds. But if you got trying to shoot it at 300 plus, they get really, really tough to control, because you basically have wings in the front, wings in the back. And if you don't get them tuned perfectly, each one is going to be different. And that's where going to the mechanical makes a lot of sense if you got those little faster bows. Some of them are a little snappier right off the bat. The harder cams, they're going to develop that speed real quick. Especially some of these new ones with the parallels, they only move like an inch.
Yeah.
Mine move a whole lot more than an inch.
Yeah.
So I have a lot longer time to develop the speed. And like you was talking about tears, I could take a perfectly tuned bow, shoots a perfect hole, and I can make it tear.
Yeah.
Just by how I grip it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So lots of times the tear indicates your form, not how the bow's set up.
Yeah.
So set your bow up right. Don't worry about paper.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. There's a guy down the road from me that's been shooting forever, and I think he's 80 years old now, and he's a Matthews dealer, and he doesn't paper tune any of the bows that he ships out of there. When you go in and buy a bow, he doesn't paper tune at all. He doesn't believe in it, and he's killed Boone and Crockett deer and won piles of competitions back in the day. So it can be a useful tool, but it can also be kind of irrelevant at the same time. And I was gonna say, you were talking about the speed thing there. I don't want to say almost every deer, including I've shot 2 bear, almost every deer that I've shot was 60-pound bow, and I had a pass through on everything. I've had one or two that I didn't have a pass through on, and that's 60 pounds, and that arrow is probably traveling around the 280 feet per second. So I know a lot of people that I want 75 pounds and I want to shoot 320 feet per second. I can't sit here and say that that's a bad idea or a good idea, but for me, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, really. I mean, I have 2 bucks on this wall in the room that I'm sitting in, and they had a pass through on both of them, and it was at 58.5 pounds. So, with a 400 grain arrow. So that's not going that fast, that's, and I don't know, part of that could be the angle that I was shooting at or where the arrow entered and exit and whatever, but I've never put a lot of emphasis on the speed, and even in target archery, especially IBO, where speed is king, you want within reason. Some classes have a speed limit, like the semi-pro and pro class, but the classes below that, they don't have a speed limit, and you could shoot 400 feet per second if you could get your bow to that speed without making it blow up. But I have noticed in the testing that I've done that my bow shoots better between 277 and like 290 feet per second. And like some people will say, well, my bow shoots perfect at 304 feet per second. And yeah, it probably does. But there is a point where it becomes a little too critical and less accurate, and definitely less forgiving the faster it gets, because I've shot 319 feet per second with my hunting bow, just playing around, and the forgivingness was not there. The arrows were not as accurate as they would be when I'm shooting 280. So,
well, and the faster the bow, the more it magnifies your mistakes in your form.
absolutely.
So if you have a little variation in your form, it's going to be a bigger variation in where your arrows go.
Yeah.
So you gotta be careful what you're looking for. And
yeah.
I know my first deer, I was 20 feet up in a tree. The trail was 40 yards away. I was shooting 52 pounds with a 21-17 full length arrow, 145 grain Muzzy broadhead on it.
Yeah.
I shot that deer, turned around, and I think all but the fletching through that deer at 52 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a long shot, and it didn't go very far, and it piled up, but I almost got a pass through at 52 pounds from 40 yards away with a big heavy arrow.
Yeah. That's it. You don't need a ton to really go through an animal like people think, but I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would argue that, but I do what works for me, and that 60-pound range works really good for killing animals. I know that. And shooting target too. Most of the stuff that I shoot for target is my indoor bow is 58.5. And then my 3D bow is 65. So just a little bit extra holding weight without having to twist and, manipulate the cables to get a different feel. But
yeah, I know. I worked up to 70 pounds, and I was shooting 70 pounds, and when I drop it down to 60, I didn't shoot as well. I shot better at the 70 because there was, was more holding weight, so I could actually pull into my form easier. A bit lighter, I didn't have that force. I had to force back into my form, and I actually shot better at 70. when I'd shoot 300 rounds, I'd still shoot 70 pounds because I shot the same bow. That time I only had one bow. But I'd find that towards the end, I'm getting better and better as I'm shooting. I'm getting tired, but I'm getting better and better as I'm shooting. It's like you would think you're getting tired, you're getting worse, but no, I was actually getting, my scores seem to be higher in the second half than the first half.
Yeah. A lot of people will shoot better with more holding weight. Some people don't, but I know I like a little bit more holding weight in competition for sure. It helps me. So, if I'm practicing at home, I don't want to hold all that weight. I know that because I can make the bow do whatever I want when I'm here. But in competition, I do like a little bit more holding weight. So
kind of force you to lock into that form a little bit more, a little bit harder into the form.
Yeah, for sure. And making you pull through the shot instead of lazy. But
yeah, it could be lazy, right?
yeah.
Hey, it's been really great talking with you. I know we've been on here for a little while, and we don't want to take out the rest of your day and get back to doing what you're doing, do some more shooting. And but it's been really great. Enjoyed talking with you, and I'm sure my listeners are going to enjoy hearing some of your stories as well. And it's always a good time talking with archers. I get to do this and talk to archers all over the world, and it's just so much fun, hearing all these different stories. And
I love this. I love archery. I love everything about it. I love going to all these competitions and competing, and I pour my heart and soul into it to do well, and I've done pretty well doing it the past couple of years. But it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of I talk to so many people trying to get information and try to make myself a better shooter, and it's like constant learning game. You're constantly talking to somebody and something new. It's like
it
never
is.
ending. I go to I go to a shoot and I'll win and I'm like, oh man, I'm awesome. And then I talk to somebody and I learn something new and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I know that? Now I have to try that, or I have to implement this into the game or whatever. And
you can get yourself really confused by trying to, okay, they're doing this, I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try that. Next thing you know, it's like, what am I doing? I'm getting worse and worse because nothing's really making any better, and then you go back to what you're doing. And if it makes sense and it's like, this, I think this could improve, and try it out, give it a try. And if it does, then keep doing it. If it doesn't, then try something different.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So what kind of advice would you give somebody that is maybe just starting out, and what to do, starting out, maybe they want to start getting in competition, what would you advise them to do?
Get a nice quality bow. Make sure that you have quality equipment to start with if you can, within reason. There's plenty of places that you can buy used equipment and like on Facebook and whatnot. But that's a big thing for me is having quality equipment that feels right for you. And then trying to link up with there is a lot of good people in this game, and linking up with and there's plenty of pros that will talk to you if you ask them, and they'll even shoot with you as well. Linking up with good people in the industry and learning from them, or even getting an archery coach too. But that would be one thing. And then the other thing is it's persistence and commitment, and I'm at times, I don't like to try to talk myself up, but it's like the only reason that I'm ever successful and that I win is because of the commitment that I make. I mean, I literally, when I'm getting ready for a shoot, I shoot 3 times a day. A lot of people don't want to do that. I'll be up at 5 a.m. and I'm working out, trying to, strengthen your mind mentally. And then, I go out and I shoot. And then on lunch, it's like it's a total commitment. If you really want to take it seriously and be successful, you got to be committed, and you have to pour everything you want into it, and you'll get back everything that you want. And if you don't, then you're not going to get back what you want. It's as simple as that. And that's the best advice that I could give somebody is, if you want it, then you can have it. You just got to go out there and give it everything you got to get it, and link up with the right people and have some good equipment at the same time. So.
Yeah, that's good advice. If you really want something, you got to put the work in, and that's the thing you got to do, put the work in. And
absolutely. Yep.
Get with a group, of people. And, one nice thing about the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group is we have a lot of people in here that have experience in different stuff. And if you're having a problem, somebody else has probably seen it. If you have one of those brand new bows and you're having a problem with it, get in a group. There's probably somebody else that has experience with that bow, or a lot of stuff is just generic stuff. So get in a group like that, or join your local archery club. Or, I go to some of the shoots and talk to the guys and the ladies there. There's, it's not just guys. There's a lot of ladies that are really good shots.
Absolutely.
And, they have a different perspective on it. And I say guys in general, it's like archer guys, archer people, archers,
exactly.
There's a lot of stuff in here that they can really, really help you. And I know, like here in Nebraska, we have our Game and Parks has range that you can go to, and they actually have people that's teaching archery, and just get with your, whatever your Game and Parks or your DNR or whatever you have, find out what programs they have. I know Nebraska has a Women's in the Outdoor, which is just ladies, getting them outdoors. And there's other events going on too. There's stuff for kids. There's all kinds of stuff. If you want to get involved in a sport that is been around for over 60,000 years, that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Right.
There's all kinds of aspects from the longbow, shooting longbows, to recurves, to Olympic bows. There's different ones in there. They can shoot into compounds, crossbows. That's all archery. I say many times that my definition of archery is a stick with a string flinging another stick.
Yeah.
So if that fits in that category, then it's archery.
Yeah.
There's no wrong archery weapon for you. I interviewed one of the guys that does the horseback archery.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. Riding a horse, controlling it with your knees, shooting bows at full gallop at targets.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That is a challenge in itself.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And they hold them differently. They, instead of being a right-hander, instead of being on the left side of the bow, it's on the right side of the bow.
Yeah.
And they're using like a thumb release, because as they're drawn back, it pulls it onto the bow, where a right-hander is going to pull it off the bow.
Yeah. Yep.
As you draw back. And that's why they teach a lot of kids, put your 3 fingers below, because what you have to do is you pinch the arrow, and as you make a fist pulling it back, it pulls the arrow off. Well, if you do that on the other side, it stays on, so they don't have to worry about keeping the arrow. Just their process of drawing forces it into their hand and onto the bow.
I believe that's where you flick the thumb to activate it, right? Is because you're pulling the shaft against the side of the riser.
Yeah, there's a little thumb release that has basically a little hook on your thumb that you're pulling back with. And then I'm not sure exactly. I've seen them. I haven't ever had a chance to use one yet.
Yeah.
But they're a little bit different, because they fasten on your thumb somehow, and that's how you're doing it.
And, that's an interesting way to do archery, but I guess there's so many different ways. But
and then you see the Japanese style bows that are really long, and they actually draw way back.
Yeah.
It's back past their head. It's like, okay, don't get too close, take your ear off. But the way they do it is clear back there. And then you have some of these bows that look like a C that's almost closed, but when you draw it back, it goes the other, reverse back direction.
Yeah.
And there's just so many different styles of bows, and they each have their own way of shooting and their own following, and just find a bow, just get an old stick, tie a string on it, and there
Yeah.
you go. There's your bow. The
Yeah.
only thing to remember is do not dry fire.
Right. Yep. Don't dry fire a bow.
Yeah.
That can be bad.
And if there's anybody listening to dry fire that's pulling loading your arrow up or your bow up with no arrow and let go of the string, that is not going to be good on anything, especially crossbows.
Yeah.
You will blow up a crossbow if you dry fire a
Absolutely.
crossbow.
Yeah.
There's so much force in those, and you can get by with it once in a while on a compound. Some bow manufacturers, you do not dry fire them at all.
No.
And I know I had people come in and their bow is, it's obviously something that happened, so it come off the string. Not some dry fire will do that. Also drawing back with your fingers and letting down when you're gripping your bow, and when you make a grip, it actually torques the bow to the side, and you let down and you actually derail it and letting down because it doesn't follow the cams. It just slides off. And I've had some come in where the axle is bent.
Yeah.
The axle is a hardened steel pin that sticks in there. How do you bend a hardened steel pin on a bow? Dry fire.
Yeah.
Dry fire is the only way to bend them.
Yeah.
You're not going to bend no way to bend them.
Yeah.
Because you got to dry fire. And people come in and I'll ask them, would you dry fire it? Because there's obviously problems. Oh no, I didn't dry fire it. Like, so I tell them, it's like, okay, if it was dry fired and there's a defect in a limb and I don't find it, it could blow up on you and have pieces come flying back at you.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I dry fired it. Okay, now then I go through and do the extra check to make sure that there's no cracks, and put alcohol on the limbs and run a cotton ball on it, and if it catches, you can see, you can say, okay, there's a defect in this limb, we need to get a new limb. But if you don't do that, it'll break. And when they figure out, it's like, okay, I don't want to admit I dry fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no, it wasn't dry fired. How did the string come off? Yeah, I just shot it. No, you shot it with no arrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you let down, no, it come off when I was letting down. And it's
Right.
like, okay, you were gripping the bow. Yep, that's why it come off. Then you can help them through some of the problems with that. But
Yeah, that can definitely happen. There's certain manufacturers that it can happen with a lot easier than others, but with with that the whole torquing part of it. But yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've even been in a shop and somebody brought in their bow and they brought it in the case and they said, "Oh, my bow, the string came off. I don't know what happened. I didn't even use it." And they like open up the case and I'm like, "Yeah, you're the 30,000th person that has had their bow blow up in their case." Yeah, randomly. No, it's because you dry fired it. But,
I actually had one guy come in one time and it says, "Is it normal for your strings to break, in the case over the summertime?"
Yeah.
Open up the case, there's a broadhead
Oh,
exposed in the lid. I'm like, yeah, every time you put a broadhead in it and close the case, yeah, it's going to touch the string. You touch the string of the broadhead, it's razor sharp, and it's going to snap that string.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I guess you're buying new strings.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
Now, in my hunting bow, I have my broadheads in my case, but they're in the quiver.
Yeah.
I stick them in there. I don't worry about the strings breaking because the broadheads are all covered.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with mine. They're all in the quiver. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's been great talking with you. I think we'll let you go, and so we can get off doing other things. So I know we could talk about this for quite a while, but I'm sure we both have other things to do today.
Absolutely.
So yeah, stay tuned for the next one. We have another interview coming up. That is not even in the United States. So stay tuned. We'll get together again in a few more days, and we'll talk to another archer and have a lot of fun talking with them. So my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101 with our special guest, Kaylin Tucker, and we will see everybody on the next one.